welcome into Triple Zeros. I am your host, Josh Buckalter. First things first, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button. Do what you have to do to make sure that you get all the updates on every episode of Triple Zeros. And when we are recording, yes, we do it late, but that's because we want to be great. So, before I get started even further, follow me on Twitter at Josh G Buck. Hit up the Facebook page at Clocker Zeros. Check out the website, Clocker Sports on Facebook. Hit up the website, clockersports.com. And, of course, the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. Got a lot to get to, not a lot of time to do it. You know the spiel and how it goes, so let's get right to it. First things first, man, we got to talk about the big weekend that the Los Angeles Lakers had, and namely the King, LeBron James, restaked his claim as the number one player in the NBA and did so in convincing fashion, holding down the reigning MVP in Giannis Antetokounmpo, who subsequently went out with a knee injury, and Kawhi Leonard on Sunday in a matchup with the Clippers that had big implications. I'm not necessarily sure it was as big as everybody wanted to make it out to be, that Sunday matchup, but it was big nonetheless. And more importantly, the Lakers are rolling right now. They've won 4 straight, and over their past 4 games, that was a really big stretch where they faced off against the Philadelphia 76ers, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Los Angeles Clippers, as I just mentioned, and they started it all off by facing off against the New Orleans Pelicans, which, as everyone knows, has a lot of former Lakers playing for them currently. Now, over this 4-game stretch, LeBron averaged 30 points. He had 11 assists, and he shot 56% from the floor, 34% from 3, and 82% from the free throw line, going there 8 times, over 8 times, almost 9 times per game. That's a lot. LeBron is out here balling, and you've seen all the talk. He shouldn't be doing this at 35. He couldn't be doing this at 35. People forget he got hurt last year and sat out a lot of time, and he takes very good care of his body. This is not a surprise to me as much as it is. I'm glad we're seeing what I thought we might see. Now, if you recall, if you've been following, and you should be following, like I said, gave you all of the places to make sure you are following the show. In the beginning of the season, I said that my dark horse candidate for MVP was LeBron because I could see him having a lot of the responsibility to score taken off of him, the attention taken off of him, and we've seen that with the Lakers and what they've done with Anthony Davis, and we'll get to him in a moment. But LeBron's leading the league in assists. He's second on his team in scoring to Davis, but only by a point, and he's got the Lakers as the 1 seed, and they clinched with that victory against the Bucks on Saturday, I believe. This is not a fluke. This is not something that you have to second guess. LeBron is doing things. This team is doing things, and I don't want to diminish the contributions of anybody else, but again, the King is back, and I'm not a big LeBron stan by any means. However, I do recognize that what I'm seeing is something special, and watching him play against the other 2 guys who are considered among the best, it's really a 3-way, and there's a 4th guy trying to force his way, and we'll talk about him a lot later, but there's really 3 guys who are in the conversation for the top player this season, with KD out and, of course, Steph not playing either. And that is LeBron, Giannis, and Kawhi, and LeBron went 2-0 against both of those guys, so I'm not sure how you argue it now. Is he going to get MVP love? Probably not, because, again, he's getting major contributions from his teammate, but he should be. And if he did win, I wouldn't be mad at it. I definitely wouldn't be mad at it. Now, again, I do not want to diminish what his teammates are doing. And number 1 on that list, obviously, is Anthony Davis. And over that same stretch, he did miss the Pelicans game. But he's averaging 32 points and 10 boards. So, and he's also shooting 54% from the floor, 38% from 3. We saw him hit a couple of big shots against the Clippers. And that ultimately, I think, is what is going to get the Lakers over the Clippers. Now, we saw earlier in the year, this brought the season series to 2-1, still in favor of the Clippers. But I think what we saw now with the Lakers is they realize that they can punish the Clippers on the inside, and a lot of people will point to the fact that you had Lou Williams on the Clippers have such a bad game, and he did have a bad game. He's had an up and down recent stretch here, but if the Lakers can find a way to consistently get a third scorer, I think you can get enough big performances out of LeBron and AD where everybody else just kind of has to do the glue guy work, where they just have to fill in 7 to 10 points and get nice. And then you have that one guy who just goes off for 20. Now, the Clippers do have the ability to go off, and you saw some really poor performances from, as mentioned, Lou Will, who was like 3 of 11 from the floor. Markieff Morris, I forget which one of the Morris twins that is actually on which team. The Morris twin that plays for the Clippers, however, was 0 for 9 from the floor or something like that. It was bad. 0 for 7 from 3. It was a really rough night shooting for those role players there. And that's not something you're going to count on, especially when the lights get bright. You think these guys are going to find their way. Now, again, it's also 2-1, so in favor of the Clippers. So I don't necessarily want to overhype what it means for the Lakers in terms of the success that they had this weekend. But I do want to hype up the numbers that LeBron put up. And, of course, like I said, you can't diminish what AD is doing. But, man, I don't know how else to put it other than LeBron's out here balling. Now, I talked about the Bucks and how they lost to the Lakers and they lost Giannis. Giannis went out and the Bucks proceeded to give up 140 points and took an L versus the Phoenix Suns. And then they lost to Denver on Monday night. It's not going to get easier. I'm not sure how long he's going to be out, but you see how valuable he is to that team, and that's where his stake in the MVP race is that when he's not there, everything falls apart. A lot of people are really high on Chris Middleton as his number 2. I think Chris Middleton's the number 3, and I don't think he's necessarily – well, I think we know – and listen, there are going to be people who's – they're going to talk about the record that they have without Giannis. They're still, I think, 4-2 without him. They're a good team. This is like a lot like the Toronto Raptors argument that I've had, where we see them doing really well in the regular season and they can win a lot of games. Same thing I would see with the Bucks if they didn't have Giannis. But when it comes down to it, they're going to need that X factor, that great divider, and that's what he is. That's what Kawhi was for the Raptors last year. Now, we've seen Giannis get shut down again against the Lakers when he had an athletic guy with length on him and LeBron. But most teams don't have that kind of person who can stick with him all game and shut him down. So you see his importance there. It's imperative that they get him back. But, man, 140 to the Suns is not a good look. Not for a team that's the 1 seed and actually has Toronto closing in on them quite quickly if they're not careful, not paying attention. Boston Celtics, the 3 seed right now, they had lost their last 2, 4 of their last 5, and they haven't won at home since the day before Valentine's Day. I bring that up because I talked about how they're another one of those teams with a lot of players who are really good, and their collection is probably better than the sum of their parts. But they're going to falter when it comes down to it because in the postseason, it is about superstars, and they don't necessarily have the superstar power. I think Jason Tatum is on the verge. You could say that he is one. I wouldn't necessarily fight with you too tough on that, but I don't think he's there yet. And it hasn't been him on this stretch, by the way. He's averaged damn near 30 points, 8 boards, but they haven't won at home. And, I mean, they won't necessarily get a home game in the second round, but they're going to get a home game in the first round, and they can't do it. They're going to fall to a team like Miami, who's having a hell of a run against the top teams this season. And so I think that you got to, if you're Boston, you kind of have to be worried about this. This is something that I think has kind of reared its head again. I'm not necessarily saying that they're a bad team or that they're not as good as everybody wants them to be. I just think that maybe, no, I guess I am saying that they're not as good as everybody wants them to be. They're capped, in my opinion, as a really good team. They're a Denver or a Utah of the East. Another one of those teams that I've been talking about all season long, where they're really good in the regular season because they're really deep and they can run at you in waves, and they got this really good coaching system and the scheme is great and everything like that. But when it slows down and teams have 7 games worth of time to pick you apart and find your weakness and exploit it, you're going to need superstar players, and they just don't have the star power to contend. Now, luckily for them, they're in the East, and that might actually be enough to get to the finals, to the Eastern Conference Finals, and then maybe even to the NBA Finals, depending on how things go with the Bucks and how soon the Sixers get Embiid and Ben Simmons back. And then, of course, like a dark horse team like Miami, and how serious they can become of a threat to the rest of the field. That's one to keep an eye on. Now, you do have the posers, as I like to call them, the sub-500 teams who are still making the playoffs in Orlando and Brooklyn. But I think that overall, it's really the top 4 teams, and then Miami's an intriguing team. I want to keep an eye on them for a couple more games, maybe another week, and see how it all shakes out, because with Philly sliding the way that they are, and I really don't know as much as I want to stick to my guns about my pick before the season of them representing the East come in the NBA Finals. Miami might be that team if they can get themselves healthy and find some consistency down the stretch here. We'll see how that goes. Jimmy's been in and out of the lineup a lot this year. They've had injuries, Duncan Robinson and things of that nature. But if they can maintain their health and find their stride, they're going to be a tough out there. You know how they play. They're a tough team. They're a tough team, a defense with Jimmy at the helm and things like that. So well coached. So that's going to be a one to watch out for. But it's not a deep race in the in the East, much like the West is top heavy, but I think you feel like maybe some of those bottom teams might be able to steal a game or two. Whereas in the East, I think it'd be sweeps for the bottom two teams. In the West, you might catch a sneak game out of whoever gets that 8th seed, which is a 3-team race between Portland, who's been 3-7 over their last 10, Sacramento, who's 7-3 over their last 10, and then New Orleans, those three are all chasing Memphis right now. Memphis has been kind of struggling. They're showing their youth, which is expected. I think the surge that they had was the surprise more than this regression is. New Orleans is kind of disappointing because I thought they would have a little bit more impact. While they're a young team that's coming together, there are some veterans for those guys to be as young as they are. So it wouldn't have been a surprise for them to make a stronger push. Again, Portland has been a disappointment. They did lose Dame for some time recently, but they were a disappointment all year. And I've laughed at a lot of people who like to talk about how it's Carmelo's fault for being there and they're losing. I'm like, dude, they were losing before. That's why they even signed Melo in the first place. They were already losing. So that's just a funny thought. Now, back to the top half of the Western Conference. You have the Rockets, and that's a team that out of the West I said was my dark horse choice to make a run for the finals, but they have been struggling. After they won 6 straight, they followed that up with a 4-game losing streak, and over that 4-game losing streak, James Harden has averaged 26 points, 6 boards, and 8 assists. However, when you dig into him a little bit deeper, he's shooting 32% from the floor and 19% from 3. He's living off free throws right now, and he's getting to the line 12 free throws, hitting 11 of them, 86%. So this is the part of the argument where when he talks about wanting to be MVP and he talks about why people don't respect his game as much, or he doesn't get why he gets the hate, and people lament that, including myself, is because of performances like this where this team is doing what they're doing and it's getting this way, and he's still out here plucking 10 threes a game and missing them all, shooting under 20%. He's living at the free now. The person in me appreciates the fact that he's finding other ways to impact the game. He's still dishing the ball out. He's still getting rebounds. He's still getting to the line at a very high rate. So it's not like he's not finding ways to impact the game, but that shooting slump has got to figure itself out because clearly it's a 2-star system. If he and Russ aren't clicking, they're sunk. And we know that James has had a tendency to get worn down. Now, it's a little bit early for that. That usually happens in the postseason. But this is not too far off base to say that this might be where they finally find out that they're worn down from having to rely so heavily on he and Russ right now by going with this ultra small ball and committing to it for a majority of the time. And I think that for all of the sizzle that was to it, there's no stake here. There's no substance to it because it can't be sustained over 7 games. Again, as I talked about with the Clippers and their weakness, if they go against the Lakers, they're going to beat them up down low. Are you kidding me? You're going to have AD working his way down low. As much as he likes to be on the perimeter and play power forward, he's going to get down low on these guys. Why wouldn't you? Dwight is having a resurgent year. He's going to be down there trying to feast on people. Even JaVale's going to be trying to dunk on somebody's head if they go against Houston. PJ Tucker is going to be food. This isn't going to... I was intrigued by the concept of it, the prospects of what could happen. They didn't add any extra bodies down there for emergency purposes, and we see already that it's feast or famine with those two guys. Now Russ was doing his thing when we last spoke, but I had to tell you the truth. Harden is making it hard to root for him when you hear how he talks about he wishes he could just be 7 feet and run and dunk. That's easy. This takes skill, and then you're like, it's like, come on, man. If you're shooting 19% from 3, sir, you can't be out here talking about somebody 6-7 foot and should dunk, which is something that he shouldn't be apologizing for anyway. You want him to be upset about his genetics? That's the saltiest of salty right there. That was not a good look. And with the stats right here and what the team is doing, Harden might want to reevaluate where he's putting his energy in the media right now and where the focus really should be. And speaking of the Rockets and their fall, it was the Oklahoma City Thunder's game, which is hilarious because both of these players, Harden and Russell Westbrook, came from the Thunder. Obviously, Russ more recently, though. But the Thunder overtook the Rockets for the 5th seed. This is just incredibly a surprise because Chris Paul, former Rocket, traded in that deal, is leading this team on the most unlikely of runs. This is just a spare parts team. You talk about a ragtag bunch of players who are playing greater than some of their parts. This is it. This is the quintessential version. They right now are the Cinderella that I think everybody would have to root for if you saw them, because if they made the playoffs and stay where they are, because this was supposed to be a rebuild. Chris Paul they were trying feverishly to trade him to Miami. He was not supposed to stay in Oklahoma City. And then when he did, they said, okay, we'll just burn the year out. They're really looking like a serious team. They're reminding me of the Clippers last year or a few years ago. Really last year, though, where that group that just wasn't supposed to be there. They're just not supposed to be doing what they're doing, and yet here they are. And it's a credit to CP3 and his leadership because, listen, I'm really tough on that dude and the antics that he has been prone to pull on the floor. But clearly he's got these guys playing at a different level than I think anybody could really have been anticipating coming into the year once they made those moves with Russ and PG. So kudos to them. Hats off. Hope they can keep it up. Back to the East, kind of bouncing back and forth. Going to wrap up on the East with this one and then the final one. But the Nets and Kenny Atkinson, head coach Kenny Atkinson, part ways. The Nets are currently the 7th seed right now in the East. 7th or 6th seed. They're in the playoffs right now. They are slightly off their pace of last year, but they are doing so without their top 2 players. Offseason acquisitions, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Kyrie made it 20 games. Kevin Durant hasn't seen the floor at all. They last year made their run with D'Angelo Russell and the rest of the gang, Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, those guys running around. Reports have broken. I don't want to call them rumors because I think they're pretty substantial at this point, pretty substantiated at this point, that Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant didn't explicitly call for Atkinson's firing, but made it clear that they weren't in line or in tune with what was going on. And for all intents and purposes, they basically called that shot. Now, backing this claim up is the fact that you had Jacques Vaughn in his first game as the interim head coach starting DeAndre Jordan over Jared Allen, who started, it was the opposite way most of the season. Now, you could say that, that's a oh my gosh, they're letting the players run the organization, but I think most people would have told you in the preseason when DeAndre Jordan signed with the Nets that it was going to be that he was going to be the starter. I'm not sure exactly why that's a surprise now. I will say that I understand Atkinson pushing back, but I don't know if that's the only thing it was. I feel like there has to be more than just that. And when you consider the 2 people who are involved in Durant and Irving, it's not far-fetched to say that maybe there were some other things that they couldn't call the shots. Now, both of them were said to be fans of his when they got there, but you have Shams Charania pointing out in The Athletic that there was a heated discussion following a 30-point loss to the Grizzlies in which Kevin Durant made it known that he was not feeling the way that the team was displaying any championship intangibles, any title traits, and kind of felt like they need to go in a different direction. Whatever the case is, I think it's highly possible, and I wrote about this in Pimpin' Ain't Easy. Check out the blog, Pimpin' Ain't Easy. Nice little plug there. I wrote about it's really possible for Atkinson to both be a good coach and not be the right coach for Durant and Irving. And it's much like the Brad Stevens thing. Now, if you know, I've been talking about the Nets were the model that I wanted the Bulls to follow, and I'll talk about them in a moment. I wanted them to kind of work with this culture, rebuild their culture, re-energize the organization, and let that lead to some attractive free agency, to becoming an attractive free agency destination in the future. They kind of bungled that, and now they are looking at a complete teardown of even the front office this time. I think what they should do at this point, you're not going to see a change in management. No matter what they say, reports are they're looking for a new general manager and a whole new front office, basically a setup, which is they're pretty much a consensus behind the times in terms of their setup in their front office. They're looking to add voices, but I don't necessarily think they're going to change up the power structure per se, as much as they are just going to add some voices to kind of diffuse the situation and diffuse the decision into a bunch of group so it's a collective decision where they're just resting on one person, which is fine. But you have to make the right decisions after that point. And I think the first one would be to hire Kenny Atkinson, because I think he's the perfect coach where the Bulls are right now. They are right now close to where the Nets were or somewhere along the first couple of years in their rebuild where they're trying to repair their image. They have a guy, the backcourt I think is the perfect starting point for them. He has his Spencer Dinwiddie and D'Angelo Russell and Zach LaVine and Kobe White. Now, it's not apples to apples, But if you're going to put a Levine and versus Dinwiddie, give me Levine. More athletic. He's not as crafty, not as much of a pure point guard, obviously, as Dinwiddie is, but he's definitely a longer guard who can get inside. He can play outside and can play off and on. And I think with Kobe, who is the D'Angelo Russell kind of gunner, younger D'Angelo more than the D'Angelo he became towards the end of that run there in Brooklyn. But you get what I'm saying here. I think that's a really good starting point. And then you have not necessarily Jared Allen, but you have your defender in big man Wendell Carter. And then the X factor there is Larry Marketing. I'm not too high on him, but the front office is, and who knows what the next coach might be. And the city seems to love him a lot more than I do. So I think the roster they're right there. They don't have a KD and a Kyrie, so it's not, you don't have to worry about him not being the good enough coach for any of these guys here. He's a coach who's going to get them to play in the right way. He's going to get them to modernize this offense. Now, they tried to get a little bit more advanced this year with taking more threes, but they're not good threes, and they don't have good shooters. He'll put them in the proper positions. Hopefully they give them the free reign to re-implement the mid-range shot. We've seen players kind of take free reign and do so themselves this season, but I want to see the coaching staff embolden them to do the same exact thing there. And I think he would just I think he's a great coach for this situation. I think it's the right situation for him. I think it's the same situation the Nets were in, like I said. And if they were to make a move, this would be the move that would kind of signal to free agents that, hey, they might be on to something here. It's an established coach that you can say he's got a proven track record. Now, is he the championship guy? Who knows? But again, like I said, I don't think it's hard to say that you can, or it's far-fetched to believe that Atkinson's a good coach and still the wrong coach for Kyrie and KD. Now let's point out Kyrie's coaching. Now, yes, it's singling out Kyrie as opposed to grouping him and Kevin Durant, but both are known to be mercurial. That's a nice way of saying moody. But Kyrie, in particular, has got a lot of coaches out of the door, or he's not lasted long with a lot of coaches. Ty Lue, season and a half. Now, that was part with LeBron, too, so you can't really blame that all on him. The one season with Mike Brown and one half with David Blatt, again, with Bron. You had Byron Allen, again. And then you got Kenny Atkinson and Brad Stevens in Boston. One season with Kenny Atkinson and two with Brad Stevens. Now, I think, first of all, half of that list is unfair, right? Most of that list is unfair because of how you got the Cavs, when we know a lot of those same coaches were being talked about as being run off by LeBron. So you can't put that all on him. But I don't think it's wrong to say that he's not necessarily a perfect match for a lot of teams. Doesn't mean that he can't find the right team, but man, that's not a good look. Let's put it that way. We were being judicious, or being very polite, being PC with the mercurial title. I'll be polite by saying that he just has to find the right fit, and it hasn't happened yet. But back to the Bulls and why I think Atkinson would be one of the reasons I said I think Atkinson would be a good fit. Kobe White, he will be making his starting debut next game on Tuesday night. Now, I know you're saying, wait a minute, starting game, huh? Kobe is the 7th overall pick in the NBA draft this year, and he's averaging 13 points and 3 assists, 3 and 2 boards. But he hasn't started the game. He hasn't missed a game. Played in every single game the Bulls have had this year. However, he has not started a game. So, gets his first start, and it's exciting because over the past just under 2 weeks, he's averaged 26 points, and he's had four boards, 4 assists, and he's shot 48% from the floor, 44% from 3, 92% from the free throw line. He had that stretch. That's beginning with that stretch of 30-point games. He had 3 in a row, culminating in a 35-point game. And from then on, he's just been kind of on a tear, and they finally rewarded him with a starting spot. Now, there's kind of mixed emotions with how long it's taken. On the one hand, I get it because he was a rookie who was very, very one-dimensional. He still kind of is. But I saw him make a couple of dimes. He had 8 assists the other night. Bravo. That was my favorite stat of the night from him. The game that they fell short against the Brooklyn Nets, actually, as a matter of fact, by 3 after coming back from a pretty big deficit. But I think that when you saw how decimated the roster was, to not have him in there a little bit sooner was a bit much. Now, he's been playing starters. I mean, he's been averaging about 30 minutes for even a couple of games before he had that breakout. So it's not necessarily like they weren't playing him enough. They just weren't giving him a start, which made sense. Again, one-dimensional rookie. Don't want to give him the pressure of having to come in there and break the ice. Let's kind of let him see what the game is doing and see let him get into it while everything's in a flow. Well, he's going to start in point guard now. They don't have anybody. They're expecting Zach to be close to being back. Otto's still going to be coming off the bench, but he's got Lowry and Wendell back in the lineup, and Shaq's been playing well in Zach's absence, and Denzel will be playing, and who's been playing well with more minutes as well. So hopefully they can figure that whole thing out and get it all rolling. But I'm glad to see him in the starting lineup, and I hope that when Zach comes back, they keep it this way so you can see how these two play together. I think it's imperative to see how the two of them manage to coexist in the backcourt if they can. And if not, you have to decide which one you're going to get rid of. I think we all know who that would be, but I think that you have to find out before the year's over. There's only like 20 games left. There's no point in trying to save anything. Oh, you got to save some scoring for the bench. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Give the people something that they want to see. Let them two play. You can always stagger it after they begin together, but you have to see what they can do on the floor at the same time. So that's very important. I'm going to switch gears. Going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'm going to switch gears, talk about the NFL and some more. I was going to talk about a free agency primer, but it really devolved really quickly into a quarterback session, and I don't think it's like anything that I can even do about it, because no matter how I want to slice it, everything goes back to quarterbacks, point blank, period. So when I come back, we're going to talk about NFL quarterback news, and of course it always comes back to my Bears. So don't go anywhere. Back in a moment. 000. You know what to do. Sit right there. Back now on 000 and switching gears over to the NFL again. I am your host, Josh Buck. Call to follow me on Twitter at JoshyBuck. Hit up the Facebook page at Clocker Sports. Hit up the website, clockersports.com, and the email address is clockersports@gmail.com. And I told you before the break that we're going to be switching and talking about some NFL action, but I kind of lied. A little bit of a fib. Not really, though, because we are actually talking about the XFL. And one of the studs in the league, the Houston Roughnecks quarterback PJ Walker, is being scouted by the Seattle Seahawks. If you know anything about the Seattle Seahawks, you know that they are quarterbacked by Russell Westbrook, who is one diminutive guy at 5'11". That's diminutive by NFL standards. Us vertically challenged people will not necessarily go and let that just stand. Now, no, but he's being scouted by the Seahawks, who have Russell Westbrook at quarterback. They need a backup, and Walker is very similar in dimension. He's a lot slighter in frame than Russ is, but they are same height. Very similar in playing style. They don't necessarily scramble to run. They scramble to find an open passing lane. And right now, Walker is leading the XFL in attempts. He's leading in yards. He is fourth in completion percentage, but he's leading in touchdowns with 15 right now. He's only thrown 4 picks, and he is second in quarterback rating. Now, he's got the leading receiver in the XFL as well, and I think that this is one of the things that the XFL was hoping for, at least the players were hoping for, to be able to showcase their abilities and get another shot at the big leagues. Last time Walker was in the bigs, wasn't really great, but another shot for him, showing that he's mature, showing that he's able to be more accurate, more consistently, and earn a spot as a backup. He's only 24, 25 years old. This would be a great opportunity for him. But the concern that I have is for the XFL. People are pretty excited about it consistently. The numbers have kind of peaked a couple of weeks ago, and they seem to be trending down, and it worries me that the thought of them losing one of their better players so fast, or losing their better players, would diminish the product so greatly. We already see there's a bit of a struggle. There's the top 3 guys between Walker, the LA Wildcats, Josh Johnson, and then Jordan Ta'amu of the St. Louis Battlehawks, who's actually killing it himself. I think that this could be detrimental. Now, maybe it opens up the avenues for more guys to come there, and that's the only opposite way that I think, or the only way that I think I could see it working out in their favor. But losing a guy like Walker so soon would be detrimental to this league that people are just hoping makes it to its, me included, hoping that it just makes it to its second season, because it's really been entertaining to watch. It's a great, I don't want to just call it a filler because it kind of sells it short, but it's a filler between the NFL season ending and the offseason picking up with free agency and things of that nature. So I hope they can keep it around. I hope that they can find a way to, if they do lose a guy like Walker, keep a steady pipeline of some kind of talent. And I think there's enough out there. It's just that's where I say that there's a really big boom here. It could be a really big bust or a really big boom for the league. The boom is that it could show guys, look, there's a viable path back into the NFL if you are to come here and play with these guys in the XFL. And I don't think that there's a lot of players who would turn that down necessarily because, I mean, why? You know, that's the whole point, is for them to try to get back into it. And if this is their way to do so, I think that a lot of guys, like I said, would jump at the opportunity. So that was the first little bit of quarterback news. And some other ones, one that we've been talking about a lot this offseason, and Tom Brady and his next residence, place of playing, place of business, whatever you want to call it. Where is he going to be next season? And the newest one is Brady to the Bay. Now, I've been saying all along I want to see him in the Raiders, with the Raiders. I'm hearing a lot now that that's less and less likely because, I mean, why would you move on from Derek Carr? Now, if they had any kind of guarantees, they would, but a lot of people are saying they should just stick with Derek Carr and see what they can do with him because he actually was a better quarterback last year than Tom Brady. I still don't buy it. I think that's a smokescreen. I think that's where he needs to go. That's what I want him to do. Being a little bit selfish. Back to the story. Now, NBC Sports' Tom Curran says that while the Patriots and the Titans are the front runners for Brady, Brady to the Titans is kind of interesting. I kind of like that too, just because it's him and Vrabel, and I would like to see Vrabel get one, and the Titans get one, and atone for that half a yard short deal. But he said the 49ers are closing hard, and that he said that Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo could basically trade places. Now, that's where he kind of loses me, because I don't see why the 49ers would cash in all their chips on a year, maybe two, of Brady, and then have to go right back to the drawing board unless they're going to go ahead and develop another quarterback behind him, or and ship out Garoppolo, who, for all the dogging of him that I did this season, he did make strides and show that he can at least manage the game. Maybe he can take another step, but again, he is an older guy to be so inexperienced, so maybe they're not willing to wait. It's just an interesting one. Like I said, I was kind of with him until he said that he and Jimmy Garoppolo will trade places. Now, I could see them going for him and having him mentor Jimmy G, but I guess you're not spending that much money. That's way too much money. And now that I'm saying that out loud, it sounds ridiculous. There's no reason why they would do that. So I guess if you get Brady, Jimmy's got to go. I just don't see them trading him back to the Patriots. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's much like the Raiders argument. Why would you move on from the guy who could be in his third consecutive season of this offense for a year or so, or Brady, of a guy who didn't look great the last time we saw him? Interesting take on it. Going to the Southwest, to America's team, it's NFC East with the Southwest. Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. Apparently, the Cowboys offered Dak Prescott a contract worth $33 million with $105 million guaranteed, and he turned it down. Now, it is important to note that this comes from ESPN's Todd Archer, and a lot of the speculation around this is a team-created narrative or team-leaked storyline to come out so that everybody knows what's going on behind the scenes, because you haven't heard much from Dak's people. And the other rumors that are floating around is that Dak actually wants $40 million, like $111 guaranteed. Now, you could argue that he doesn't deserve it, and you might be right, but I know guys like Jared Goff, who haven't done nearly what he has on the field individually, are getting paid like that. Carson Wentz, who was a passenger for the biggest moment of his franchise, are getting paid handsomely, and Dak is sitting here way outperforming his draft slot, way outperforming the expectations of the team. And I know the number one argument, well, he has Ezekiel Elliott, but teams will load up on the box if they could do so, right? If it was as simple as just having Ezekiel Elliott, and that's why Dak is good, Zeke wouldn't be eating. Zeke's still eating. Now, that's because Zeke is good, but that's because there's some pressure taken off of him too, because teams have to respect what Dak can do. Now, is he perfect? No. Is he the best quarterback in the league? No. But every new quarterback that gets signed, when they're at the level that Dak is, becomes the highest paid or very close to the highest paid. And now this contract would make him somewhere along those lines, but it wouldn't give him the top spot. He wants the top spot. I get it. Because the next guy, you have a couple of contracts coming up soon after that are going to top him immediately. So he kind of wants his little time in the sun, his little run in the sun, which I get. Because, I mean, you gave it to Zeke with a $100 million contract that's not really a $100 million contract. So give Dak the money. I listen, and if you don't, and you franchise him, then so be it. That's smart. You can't let him walk. If they let him walk for some reason, I'm going to Dallas myself and bring him back here to Chicago. I know they won't. I'm just saying, putting it out there, because I'm going to wrap up the NFL segment talking about my beloved Chicago Bears and how disappointed I am in the stories that are coming out, but why I'm encouraged by the stories coming out at the same time. Now, I know you're like, what? How can you be both? Here it is. Talked about all last week about how Ryan Pace has been double talking. You can't believe what he said. I wrote about that in the Last Word on Pro Football. Check that blog. You see how I dropped that in there too? Nice and smooth. I talked about how everything that he's been saying so far, Ryan Pace, he's done the opposite. And he's been under wraps. His entire tenure has been kind of under wraps. Every draft pick he's made has been a surprise. Every move he's made has been a surprise. The Khalil Mack trade was a surprise. Drafting Mitchell Trubisky was a surprise, even to his head coach at the time. So you can't put it past him to be double talking right now. And why I'm disappointed is because I'm hearing a lot of chatter connecting the Bears to Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Andy Dalton. We all know the Bengals are in prime position to take Joe Burrow out of LSU with the first overall pick, and they should do so. And rumor has it that the Bears are the ones who are looking to move in and take Dalton off the Bengals' hands. No. Now, I know he's connected with Bill Lazor, and people will see the 4 Pro Bowls and say he just hasn't had the supporting cast. I mean, it's Cincinnati, and I agree with that. But Dalton has had a lot of bad throws himself and has had his bad throws happen at the worst possible time. Sound familiar? Don't need that. We don't need an older, less mobile Mitchell Trubisky running around just because we've seen him do well at times before. We need consistency. The Bears need consistency in what they're trying to do. That's where the real issue lies here, is that people are trying to find the ideal. They're trying to find the ideal of what they think these incoming guys are going to be. And I think you kind of have to find a guy who has shown you that he's scratching the surface of what he can be, which is why I've been such a big proponent of a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, because we saw him in Minnesota be a passenger. We saw him in New Orleans be a passenger still, but he was a conductor he's an extension of Sean Payton. He was able to run that offense very efficiently and very effectively. And I think he's shown that he can take control of an offense and run it he can be the coach on the field. You might say he doesn't take enough chances, but I think with the team that the Bears have constructed, you don't need that. You need a guy who take enough chances and be aggressive enough with the football. And I think that is Bridgewater, or a guy like Derek Carr. I don't think it's Andy Dalton who's going to force it and turn the ball over at the worst possible time. I don't think it's a guy like Nick Foles who's had one good season that resulted in the Super Bowl but didn't happen in Chicago. I don't think it's a guy like Marcus Mariota who, for all the accuracy and the natural talent, lacks the leadership skills and the it factor to be the franchise caliber starting quarterback. I don't think trading for a guy like Alex Smith solves anything, and if he beats out Mitchell Trubisky, you got huge problems. Same for a guy like Case Keenum. Tom Brady, Phillip Rivers are nope. I think you have a chance with Brady, but you don't have the protection scheme for him. You don't have the running game for him. You need a mobile guy. I think that while we're hearing the connections to Dalton, though, and the connections to Foles, that could be the real sign that something else is in the works. Something else is at play here. And that's where I'm hoping. Will it be Bridgewater? Probably not. Will it be Derek Carr? Probably not. But there could be a situation where they move up to get one of these quarterbacks that they like in the draft. Or they could swing a deal for, maybe it is a Bridgewater or Derek Carr. Who knows? Anything is possible right now. I just know that it's both frustrating and encouraging, because when you read it, it's like, oh no, why is everybody so encouraged by Andy Dalton? But then you have to fall back on what you've seen in the past and realize, you know what though? Let me chill and realize that this could be something better, because it might not necessarily be all they're saying. The Bears have been connected to a lot of players, but like I said, everything that Pace has done usually in the draft has been under, I don't want to say a lock and key or anything like that, but it's been rather close to the vest. And you don't necessarily know exactly what he's thinking and where he's planning to go with it until it happens. So we'll have to just wait and see. And I'm just hoping that that's what happens, that he surprises and pulls out a big one. Hopefully it's Bridgewater. Hopefully it's Derek Carr. Hopefully it's not Dalton or Foles, Mariota, Smith, Keenum, or anything like that. I'd rather they ride with Mitch and then go back to it next year than try any of those solutions, because I think that they'll switch and win too many games to actually get a good enough pick when they'll actually have they'll have their first round pick next season. So if you're not gonna go and get a Bridgewater or a Derek Carr like that, or trade it for one of these real first round pick quarterbacks, stand pat with Mitch and let it ride, son. And then maybe you divest some funds in the offseason and reset this whole thing, because you're gonna be clearing house anyway. Point blank period. If they don't get it done this year, you're probably going to see a whole new setup in this entire organization starting next season. So that's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Follow me on Twitter, like I said, Josh E. Buck. Hit up the Facebook page at Clocker Sports. Hit up the website, clockersports.com. Hit up the email address if you need to reach out to me, clockersports@gmail.com. And, of course, as always, follow the reading materials, pimpitain'teasy.com and Last Word on Pro Football, and, of course, clockersports.com. So until the very next time, until I see you, you know what it is. Is that the sound of the horns?